let's get started. Are there any disclosures of interest? None noted. Any additions to the agenda? Heidi, I guess we have Bernie's item under other business, the mental health issue. So we'll move on in the agenda then, and then we'll deal with the item number 4, the adoption of the minutes from the November 22nd meeting. Have a mover and seconder to adopt those minutes. Councillor Patterson, Councillor Corbett. All those in favor? I can't see Ryan. I'm gonna have to wait for Ryan. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Heidi, is Dr. Strauss online this morning?
Yes, Mr. Chair, he has joined us.
Okay, then we'll move on to item 7.2, which is the monthly update from Dr. Strauss.
I think you're on mute there.
Thank you. This pandemic's going to be over before I figured out how to do that. So thank you, Mr. Chair. It's always nice to see everyone and nice to address the advisory board through you. The situation regarding the Omicron wave in our community is much unchanged from my last update to the Board of Health. It continues to spread very rapidly. It continues to cause milder disease than was observed previously in the Delta wave. I spoke, I think it was on just this past Friday, with a physician whose main practice is in some nursing homes in our community. And in some of the nursing homes, he's literally seen 100% of the residents get COVID, Omicron, and 100% of them do okay. So he described, I think, a population of about 63 people, and 0 of them went to the hospital. So now, as you're, I'm sure, aware, it's been discussed a lot in news media. If it is the case, and it appears to be, that Omicron causes severe outcomes, such as hospitalizations or death, at least 50% less often, but it spreads 8 times as fast. 50% of 8 times as many is still a large number. Fortunately, also, we have had a very successful vaccination program. 90% of adults have had at least 1 dose of the vaccine, and that further prevents hospitalizations and death. So I just received the status report for hospitalizations in our community. The number, unfortunately, has not yet peaked. We're now at 10 residents of Haldeman, Norfolk are in hospital being treated for COVID-19. I believe 5 of these are in intensive care. It seems that provincially, we have started to see a peak. As with previously in the fall, when there was this 4th wave that spread in larger cities and then sort of came to us later, I think we might be seeing something like that, that it came here later and it will end here later. But for now, 10 individuals is certainly a fair amount to have hospitalized from this illness. So as I say, not very much to update from my last Board of Health update. However, as you are probably aware, at the Board of Health meeting in December, a resolution was passed that I would deliver a opinion on kindergarten masking following Mr. Hunter's deputation on the topic. And it was thereafter determined by Ms. Van Dyke and the county clerk that it would be most appropriate to deliver that opinion to the Health Advisory Board first. So if you have time to hear that and are interested, I can deliver that opinion now. I do see there's a hand up, so I should maybe pause.
Councillor Corbett, you have a question?
Yeah, I'll ask my question now before you make your presentation. Maybe you can include it with regard to the food chain supply and the existing trucker incidents that are happening. How is that going to affect us and the people in our community?
From what I can gather, this supply chain problem is only going to get worse. It seems to me that from a food security point of view, we're going to be okay. That I don't expect famine. I do expect increasing inconvenience. But I'm not a supply chains expert. I'm not a agricultural logistics expert. So I do in fact suspect that there are many members of the agricultural community in Hallam and Norfolk who would be able to provide a more accurate prediction on that point than me. It's not good either way. So I'll proceed by your leave into my mask recommendation. So on background, the resolution directed staff to work with the medical officer of health to bring forward an opinion related to the masking of kindergarten students in schools. I prepared a written report, which I can send out with full references afterwards, but I will just summarize that report. So I started with a jurisdictional scan. In Denmark, and a lot of this work has in fact been done by Public Health Ontario, and I've referenced a number of papers that that agency has prepared. In Denmark, children under 12 are exempt from wearing masks. In England, children under 11 are exempt from wearing masks. In Finland, masks are not required. In the Netherlands, masks are not required under age 13. In France, masks are not required under age 6. In Sweden, masks are not required. This didn't update, but in Ireland, I believe under grade 1, masks are not required. In the United States, I believe it's 10 states have mandated masks for all students in school, and 8 states have forbidden that school boards mandate masks. The other 32 states have left it to individual school boards. I believe Germany has done something similar where it's a state-by-state issue. Israel, masks are not required under age 7, and Norway, masks are not required under age 7. I then looked to expert bodies to see what recommendations they had made. So the World Health Organization had published in August of 2020 the following. Based on the expert opinion gathered through online meetings and consultative processes, children aged up to 5 years should not wear masks for source control. This advice is motivated by a do-no-harm approach and considers child developmental milestones, compliance challenges, and autonomy required to use a mask properly. More recently, at the beginning of last year, in preparation for schools reopening the hospital for sick children, in partnership with the other children's hospitals across Ontario, published their expert recommendations. And on the subject of kindergarten students, they said that regardless of community transmission, non-medical masks should not be required. I then performed a scan of the primary medical literature myself, and on background. In general, in medicine, we view properly conducted randomized control trials as the gold standard upon which we base our evidence base. So there have been many what are called case control studies on the use of face masks, and I found a meta-analysis or a systematic review, that means a study of studies, that looked at 6 case control studies. A case control study is when you look at 150 people who have COVID, 150 people who don't, and you ask them, were you wearing a mask or not? These studies have shown disparate results, and you can imagine are subject to all sorts of biases. There are also retrospective cohorts where they did studies by school board to school board. But you can imagine that those are biased as well, based on it is often the case that richer districts where parents are less engaged in essential services are more likely to have mask mandates. So rather than wading through those papers, I looked specifically for randomized controlled trials. The Cochrane Foundation did a meta-analysis, so a study of studies that included 44 randomized control trials, but although this was published during the COVID pandemic, these were 44 trials for other illnesses. They concluded that wearing a mask probably makes little or no difference to the outcome of laboratory-confirmed influenza. They concluded that wearing an N95 respirator compared to a mask probably made little to no difference. And ultimately, they said the pooled results of randomized trials did not show a clear reduction in respiratory viral infection with the use of medical surgical masks during seasonal influenza. So influenza is a different disease, but that was sort of the evidence base going into the pandemic. And that's why, as of February 2020, most bodies were saying do not wear a mask in the community. So I am aware of only 2 randomized control trials that have taken place regarding COVID-19. One is the DanMask trial. It was done in Denmark. They told 3,000 people to wear masks, 3,000 not to. 42 members of the first group got COVID and 53 in the other group. So they concluded that the public health measures to wear a surgical mask did not reduce SARS-CoV-2 infection rates among wearers by more than 50%. So there, as you can tell, 42 versus 53, there's a difference, but it wasn't considered statistically significant. Now, that was not a study that looked at whether my mask protects you. That was a study that looked at whether my mask protects me, and it basically showed, wasn't able to show that it did. So really, what I'm left with is this one RCT that was performed by researchers from Yale and Stanford, done in Bangladesh. This study looked at tens of thousands of people. They went village by village, recommending masks, surgical masks versus cloth masks. Ultimately, they found no difference in COVID-19 infection from wearing cloth masks at all, period. They did find that the use of surgical masks prevented COVID-19 infection in persons over 50. They did not find any benefit to surgical masks or cloth masks in persons under 50. So that's about the state of the evidence in terms of benefit. In terms of harm, there was a survey of parents, 25,000 parents in Germany, looking at side effects of wearing masks. 68% of the parents said that their children had at least one impairment while wearing masks. The most common complaints were irritability, headache, difficulty concentrating, less happiness, reluctance to go to school, malaise, impaired learning, and fatigue. This was not a control trial, but it is what it is. It's parents' report. Anecdotally, I've had several parents and a couple teachers call my office to let me know that they feel masking is causing children depression or anxiety, nausea, or dizziness. So in conclusion, internationally, Haldeman Norfolk would appear to be quite an outlier in masking school-aged children. And this would seem to be in contravention of expert opinion generally, based on those statements by the World Health Organization and Sick Kids Hospital. The benefits have not been convincingly demonstrated. In fact, one could say there's good evidence that cloth masking is of no benefit and that no sort of masking is of benefit to children. As the Omicron wave continues to progress rapidly, one might anticipate that many of the children required to wear masks in school are in fact COVID recovered with robust natural immunity. The harms of this policy have not been clearly delineated. They've not been well studied. An anecdotal basis is, take it for what it's worth. In that sort of instance where we don't know what the harms might be, that's when we talk about the precautionary principle. We might say that as a society, we've never covered children's faces for 2 straight years, and the long-term impacts of that cannot be known. As such, I recommend that kindergarten children in our health unit not be required to wear masks. And that is both the end of my report on masks and the end of my update. So I'm happy to take whatever questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Strauss. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Any comments? Councillor Hopkins?
Thank you, Chair Del Monte. Through you to Dr. Strauss. What is the mandate through basically the province of Ontario? What, for example, is the Toronto School Board? What do they do in regards to the masking?
I did not complete a jurisdictional scan on that matter. I understand that most of that many of our neighboring health units are not. I imagine that Toronto District School Board is. My understanding is that the requirements from the Ministry of Education provincially are that children grade 1 and above must wear masks, but that for kindergarten under, it would be left to individual school boards. So I don't know what % of public health units, or I mean, it's not really public health units that are making the decision, it is school boards, and I don't know what % of school boards have made which decision.
Okay, that would have been probably a really important piece to know just moving forward, because you stated that you consider our school board, in particular, we're looking at the Grand Erie District School Board, to be an outlier among in terms of the masking. So what other school boards then in this close jurisdiction do not have mask mandates for junior, senior kindergarten?
I guess I have received firsthand reports on this matter. I have not officially corroborated them, so I would not. I guess unless when I prepared this report, Every statement is referenced to either a major newspaper article or a scientific literature. So I guess my understanding of what's happening in neighboring health units is about hearsay, and I wouldn't want to declare for this body what the practices are.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I see no other hands. Thank you, Dr. Strauss. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to staff reports, and the first one is on page 6, and it's in regards to a service agreement with Home Comforts Childcare.
I thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be presenting this report to the committee, please. Fairly straightforward report, I hope. Home Comforts is a nonprofit childcare center in Waterford that's been operational for almost a year now. We do not, as a service manager, we do not have a contract with this center, but there are 15 licensed spaces that are available, and we have 100% provincial funding available within our budget to provide subsidized childcare through these spaces. As we're all aware, there's a huge need for childcare spaces across both Haldimand and Norfolk counties. This center is within Waterford. There's one other center that is operational in Waterford that we do have a contract with. And just to give you a gauge, there are 126 families or caregivers waiting for spaces for that center. So these 15 spaces are some help, but obviously are not quite enough across the county, but it does get us a little bit further ahead to provide options for families and caregivers, some of whom could not access childcare due to the cost prohibitive nature that comes through with people who are lower income and have children that need care. The other thing that I wanted to note about the Home Comfort Center is that the spaces are infants, toddlers, and preschool. Infant spaces are not available in the current center in Waterford, so it does offer a few additional spaces for some families that have that need. It is a need, but it's certainly a need that's not met through some of the centers. They're not able to provide that. So we're excited that this is an option that would be available for families who need that support. I think that's really it. In summary, we're just the staff are bringing this forward to request that we move ahead with a service agreement with this operator so that we're able to provide these spaces on a subsidized fee to families who need it. I'll open it up to questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. I have Councillor Huffman.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, thank you, Ms. Huffman.
Thank you, Chair Del Monte, through you to the report. I just want to say I don't really have a question. I guess my one question is, did you say that for the other center in Waterford, there's 126 on the wait list?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Huffman. Yes, that's for all childcare ages. I just wanted to have a number to present because knowing there's a wait list is one thing, but knowing the scope of the wait list, I think, is a bit more information that provides a bit of insight into what that need is across our counties and the need to look at other options for sure.
Absolutely. And that's why I just wanted to make sure that I understood the number correctly. I wholeheartly support this service agreement with Home Comforts. Waterford is in desperate need of childcare. We have a large subdivision that is being built in the process. We've had quite a number of young families come into the area, and we are very underserviced in terms of the childcare numbers. So this couldn't come at a better time, and I'm hoping that news comes down the pipe soon that we'll have another center opening in the Waterford area soon to help service these other 126 families who are on the wait list. And that doesn't even account for what the wait list is for this new center that we're speaking of. So, and again, childcare subsidy is such a gateway for so many families to access quality licensed childcare that both thumbs up in the air.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much, Councillor Huffman. 100% agree. Absolutely. We need so much more. And as you said, being able to access affordable childcare just presents so many opportunities for families to be able to work or pursue education or other goals. And to know that many aren't able to and are on a wait list is really hard to fathom. And so I think the more work that we can do to move ahead with more spaces across both counties, honestly, it is across the entire province that we need support, but for both counties. But it's a positive first start. And since we do have the provincial funding available within our budget, it was an opportunity that we really wanted to pursue. So thank you very much for your comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see no other hands at the moment, so I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder for the motion as printed on page 8 of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Huffman, second by Councillor Taylor. All those in favor of that motion? It is carried unanimously. So we'll move on in the agenda. I guess so Heidi will go down to other business and we'll deal with Councillor Corbett's item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to summarize Councillor Corbett's question, and certainly if I have misinterpreted the question, Councillor Corbett, please feel free to correct me. So my understanding of the question was that there is some concern in the community about the lack of mental health and addiction supports. And so the question was related to the funding of those types of services and how that funding is being used and what kind of confirmation that we have of the funding that is coming to the community and where and how it is being used. And I'm getting a thumbs up from Councillor Corbett, so I have summarized the question correctly. So Mr. Chair, through you to members of committee, our community partners who in the area of mental health and addictions, they are what we refer to as transfer payment agencies with the province, meaning that their funding comes from the province directly to them and their accountabilities are back directly to the province. So we are not, we're not an intermediary in that. And so I don't, for example, receive financial statements from our community partners who are funded directly by the province. We are, and I can share with committee that the work that we do in social services, in health and social services related to mental health and addictions, is from a support perspective and a system navigation perspective. So what that means is that, for example, in public health, we have our harm reduction program where we do provide safe use supplies to individuals who are struggling with an addiction, as well as support to manage their addiction and system navigation to get connected to withdrawal management services and or mental health and addiction treatment. We, in social services and housing, through our housing support program and through our case management and community support program in Ontario Works, we do provide ongoing case management and support to our clients from a client-centered perspective, meaning that if there's someone who's living with a mental health issue and or an active addiction, we will continue to support them to make sure that we can support them as best as we can for them to achieve housing stability and homelessness prevention, as well as so that they can maintain their participation requirements in Ontario Works, and again, as that system navigator to get connected to those community-based mental health and addiction supports. In social services and housing, we do not provide clinical mental health and addiction services. So our staff are not, we do case management, we do support, we connect people to community-based services. But for example, we don't have mental health clinicians on staff. We don't provide therapy to individuals. That's not within the mandate of public health or social services and housing. And so we really connect with our community partners, and our community partners are directly funded by the Ministry of Health or other provincial ministries through that transfer payment agreement. So in closing, I know that during the COVID-19 pandemic, there have been challenges for our services and for our community partners to provide face-to-face service for health and safety reasons. And so many services have had to go virtual or via the telephone, which is not always ideal for people. We know that. But hopefully we are starting to move towards recovery. And I would say that if there are concerns, with specific services that members of council and or community members should bring those forward to those agencies directly. I think that given the challenging environment that we are in right now, our office and our community partners have done the very best that we can to maintain services to clients and to try to problem solve creatively around the health and safety issues that come with direct face-to-face service right now. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Okay, thanks, Heidi. Councillor Corbett.
I appreciate that, and thank you. My concern was I understand that there are some funding that is received by our partners, and I wanted to know what checks and balances they had on it. And from your point of view, with regard to our working with these agencies, it's perhaps an unfair question. The people that you refer, do you feel they're getting adequate responses to their concerns? Because I do know we have quite a bit of mental health issues, and the drug culture in our community, the underground, is unreasonable, and people reaching out for me for concerns as to what we're doing. I understand your part. You can only do what's within your mandate. In dealing with these other agencies, whether it's fair or not, do you feel they're up to the task, checks and balances, liaison, referrals, and all this thing? I appreciate a comment.
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Corbett, we have strong, positive working relationships with all of our community partners. Our staff are very well versed in referral processes. There are waiting lists everywhere in our community for residential treatment, for outpatient treatment, for community-based counseling and support. And I think that those are some of that is some of the feedback that came through the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan when mental health and addictions was recognized as a priority area, is that it is sometimes challenging for people to get the depth of service that they need in the moment because of wait lists, or because sometimes those specialized services are available outside of our communities in Haldimand and Norfolk. And I would say that our experience is not unique. Being involved with our Provincial Social Services Association, I know that other communities are dealing with the same issues, and sometimes rural communities have unique challenges because of our geography. So I think that all of our community partners deliver high quality responsive service within the scope of practice that they have and within the funding envelope that they have. Are there wait lists? Absolutely, there are wait lists.
So what I'm hearing, Heidi, is that the program is severely underfunded, and our communities and other communities are suffering because of it.
Mr. Chair, through you to Councillor Corbett, I I think that we could definitely benefit from increased investment into mental health and addiction supports, and in those complementary supports that go with that. So for example, we talk about safe, affordable, supportive housing and a housing first approach. And that when we are able to stabilize somebody's housing, then we can wrap the supports around them within the safety and dignity of their own home, and we can support them in achieving stability in other areas of their lives. So for sure, we would benefit from increased investments and increased services.
The information I get is that we were getting the funding. Perhaps it wasn't being utilized in the best manner. And from what you're telling me, that we're underfunding, that we could use more funding to assist, that we're addressing the concerns we have with the resources we have.
Mr. Chair, I would say that definitely we are all doing our best in Haldimand and Norfolk to address the concerns with the resources that we have. If members of the community have specific concerns with specific services, then they should bring those forward to that particular agency. I can't comment on the accountabilities or the way agencies in the community use their funding. That's between them and the province as their funder.
Okay, thank you. Heidi, is there anything else you want to bring to the committee's attention?
Mr. Chair, I would just note that Norfolk County has completed their levy supported operating budget deliberations, and as part of that, the health unit budget and social services and housing were considered. Those budgets were reviewed with Haldimand County senior leadership prior to being presented to Norfolk Council, and we will be presenting, we'll be working with Haldimand staff around presentation during Haldimand budget deliberations as well.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. I see no other hands and there's no other items listed, so I'm going to call for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Patterson? Question, or are you moving the motion?
Yeah. No, I have a comment.
Okay, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair Delmonte. Just backing it up, I guess, to communications and to Dr. Strauss's report. I watched the Norfolk Council meeting and also get the local Simcoe paper. But I'm just thinking, going forward, if something that could perhaps be important or controversial, I'm not sure if the other members of Haldimand Council were aware of the discussion that was going to happen regarding masks for kindergarten or younger kids. So I'm just thinking, even though Norfolk is well aware of this, if we could maybe get a heads up from staff if there's something coming that's going to be in the report, just so we can do our due diligence and do a bit of homework. I mean, like I said before, I'm remiss. I could have told both my colleagues from Haldimand, but I think that should come from staff, just to keep in the back of our mind if something else pops up coming forward. Just my 2 cents worth.
Heidi, do you want to comment?
Thank you for that feedback, Councillor Patterson, and I will share those thoughts with Dr. Strauss as well.
Okay, have Councillor Taylor.
Also with Dr. Strauss's report, did we accept it as information? Did we accept that report? I just thinking about that now. I'm not sure if that came up.
There wasn't a motion passed to receive
Okay.
information. I did. I just it's a.
Oh, okay, perfect. If it's not in the clerk notes, we're good to go then. Not to worry.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I'll move for adjournment then. I know
Okay,
you were looking
thanks.
for that when the hands shot up.
Thank you. Seconder is Councillor Corbett. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Have a good day, everyone.
Take care,
Thank you.
everybody.
Take care.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye, guys.